What's up, everybody? CJ here, and I want to talk about a concept that is fairly standard at the higher level of play when you have a lot of shoving lanes or lanes with priority. For those of you that don't know, a lane with priority is typically a lane that shoves, and they have priority because they're going to be the first ones able to move, the first ones able to roam, the first ones able to get initiative on the map outside of their own lane, right? So we all know how to play this situation where the lanes are shoving into us as the jungler, right? The jungler's play is very standard. If the mid lane's shoving in, you can approach the lane for a gank from here or from over here. If your bot lane's shoving in, it's pretty similar. You can approach from the river, approach from the tri. We all know how to play proactively, right? Playing proactively basically means you're looking for ganks because the lane's shoving into you, and that means you have some amount of initiative or some reason to go to a lane because there's potential to get kills and get resources and get your team ahead and all this stuff. But a lot of the lower elo players don't know what to do when their lanes actually have initiative, right? So having initiative is good, right? But it might be a little bit confusing if you don't know what to do with initiative. So let's say, for argument's sake, all three lanes are pushing, and we're on the blue side here, right? So let's say all three lanes are pushing in based on matchup, right? Let's say your top laner is Fiora versus Maokai. Let's say your mid laner is Arise shoving in, Talon or something. That matchup isn't actually as shove-worthy as I make it out to seem, but you get the point. And let's say your bot lane is, range versus melee support, and, they're shoving in, right? So the real question is, what can you do here? All the lanes are shoving in, so you're not really doing level 2 or level 3 dives most of the time. And you don't really want to route for those. You might want to be nearby. But what you really want to do is you want to be looking for safe invasion, and you want to be looking for match gank scenarios. So let's talk about safe invasion first. So because laners are shoving, they're going to have first rotation movement, right? If our mid laner is free to move, if their top laner is held under the turret, if they're farming under turret, right? That gives first move initiative, right? So let's say, let's say you moved into their jungle, right? That means your AD carry and your support has first move initiative. That means you can fight for the blue if they started the red buff, and vice versa. You can fight for the Gromp, you can fight for the wolves, because your laners will be able to move first. Your mid laner will be able to come over here first, and you're just going to have a numbers advantage given that your laners know what to do with initiative, right? So they see that you're fighting, they have first move initiative because they're the ones that shove in the lane first. That's just how it works, because you're going to abuse the fact that you have initiative by putting initiative on the map, right? Let's say instead you started at the blue buff and you're doing the same thing. That means your top lane has first roam initiative to the red. That means your mid lane has first roam initiative to the red, and you can go to the red. So this is a fairly standard concept seen in Chinese and Korean solo queue and to some extent EOS, but I don't see a lot of this in North America for the state that, one, people don't really know why they're shoving the lane as they should be, right? Like your top lane Fiora might know to shove the lane and then go to ward and protect, but sometimes the jungler doesn't trust the top laner enough to say, okay, I'm going to invade, there are Krugs here, back me up because you have initiative, right? And that's how the game should be played. So you as the jungler have to communicate with your laners, be like, okay, I'm going to go for this play, or ping on the way, or ping assistance, like ping one time on your top laner assistance, and then ping one time on where you're going, right? And so that gives your team the initiative move, right? You're going to be stealing more jungle camps. You're going to be taking away their buffs more often. You're going to be getting scuttle. You're going to secure the area. You're going to see where their jungler is because they can't opt into 3v2s or 3v1s. And if they do decide to opt into 3v3s, let's say everyone goes to red, then what's going to happen, right? If the mid laner goes and the top laner goes, then the shove just crashes into the turret, right? And they're going to be losing valuable gold and EXP under the turrets. And if you always make their enemy laners lose experience and gold, then you can just back out. You can just retract out of their jungle, and then it's a win-win, right? Even though you don't necessarily get anything, their jungler doesn't necessarily farm anything either, because if it's a 3v3, then they're there. Then you can retract, go into your own jungle, and they've lost 2 waves for the sake of 1 invasion on 1 camp, right? So they're losing, 4, 5, 6 minions twice. So let's say they're losing 10 minions, 5 minions top, 5 minions mid, for the sake of 1 raptor camp. That's a plus EV trade for you, and you should always be willing to take that trade in the jungle counter gank situation, or in the jungle invasion situation, excuse me. So what I want to talk about here is match ganking, right? So the game starts off, and you're like, okay, we have 3 shoving lanes. What can we do? How should we be playing this situation? And the real question is, what is the enemy going to do, right? Now let's say you don't have a read on their enemy, right? Let's say you don't know exactly where they want to go. Maybe they want to gank top, maybe they want to gank mid, maybe they want to gank bot, right? Maybe it's not so clear. Maybe because their bot lane is Jhin Thresh. It's more likely they want to go here. But let's say it's equally likely that they want to go top because their top laner is a Riven and they'll have QW at level 2, right? There's an equal chance that maybe he wants to gank this lane. Or maybe the mid lane is, I don't know, some mid laner with CC that I can't think of right now that they can get behind and do a gank on yours, right? Maybe you don't necessarily know. And I would say to this, okay, so you don't necessarily know, but if you don't have any reads and you don't have any tendencies on the other jungler or the other player, because at higher ELOs you play with the same people enough so you know certain tendencies about certain players, I would say they fall into a couple of categories. Number 1, they're just clueless and they don't think about the game anyway, right? So if they're clueless, they're just going to go yada yada, oh, I'm going to full clear or whatever, and not going to put any pressure on the 3 pushing in lanes. That's number 1. Let's say they're not that type of player, right? Let's say they're semi-intelligent. So if they're semi-intelligent, they have a couple of plays. They can start, in this example, if they're the red side jungler, they can start the top side, do a camp and do one of these 2 camps, or do the wolves on the way, and then they can go for the bot lane gank, right? And the reason that they want to do this is because bot lane has 2 priority targets, or 2 targets that they can kill, right? That means they can get 2 times the amount of gold, or roughly first blood and a kill on top, right? So some players play to this strat, and given that all laners have equal gank ability, meaning all laners have equal CC or enough damage to trade, getting their enemy low enough to go for the gank, then they'll opt into bottom side. So I think that one of the major things that you can do is you can generalize the situation. Is the enemy jungler smart enough, or can they think of the fact that they can get 2 kills bottom instead of 1 kill top? Now, that's one of the situations, but I don't think a lot of players think like that on the North American and EUS servers. I don't even think Korean players think that much about getting 2 kills bottom. I think that the Chinese players think about it a lot because they're very gold-centric. I think that the reason Korean junglers gank bottom a lot is because first brick is easily taken by 4 or 5 people in the bot lane when everyone goes bot mid-roams and then TP down. And then first brick comes to the bottom and then they get drag and then they get more macro initiative, whereas Chinese players are thinking more about the gold-centric idea. What I want you to think about is putting up a match gank situation. So here's what I want you to do in general. If you're on blue side, I want you to start red. Go to get your level 3 off of your blue and your wolves or your blue and your gromp. And then go to scuttle. And here's why. So this is the most standard match route that you can do. And here's why. Think about what happens on the map. Your bot lane has 2 wards, right? Where are they going to ward? They're going to ward here, and, maybe they're going to ward over here. Possibly, unlikely that supports are going to walk that far, but these are the 2 main ward areas. Maybe here, right? But overall, they're going to have control over this right side area. So can the jungler actually gank here? What route does the enemy jungler have to do to be able to gank your bottom lane? Well, if they walk over here, they get spotted by the ward. So what they have to do is they have to walk all the way around to gank over here, or they have to walk all the way around, go over the pit if they're playing Graves or Nidalee or Shaco or something, and then gank from here, right? That's a big commitment. So I find that often enough, you're going to find that your bot lane survives ganks on blue side and dies to ganks on red side. That's just because you have the pit on your side and your wards are more beneficial. So I would say if you're on blue side, route towards the top lane if you're doing match ganks, because when you do this, you can drop a ward over here for your mid laner, clear the scuttle in the river, And then if you really want to, you can drop a ward here. But you don't really need to do that because your own top laner can drop this ward. So what's going to happen as a result on the left side of the map that you routed bottom to top? You're going to be able to say, okay, well, I put my ward here. I did the scuttle, so if they do take the blast cone over, then we'll see them in the scuttle. And my top laner can use the ward here. That's it. No jungle gank ability, right? You cover all the options. Now your laners can proceed to shove, and if they see them in the ward or the scuttle, then you can just, ping it and they'll just back off because there's enough time to react in all three of these spots. I want to make a side note about Graves and Nidalee and Shaco here because they can take the blast cone over and then they can queue over this or do something over here where they just bypass the scuttle, right? And remember, we talked about taking the scuttle. Taking the scuttle is easier for us because our laners have push initiative, so you're going to get the scuttle more often than they're going to get the scuttle. So reverse it. What do I want you to do on red side, right? Well, on red side, it's a lot easier for your bot lane to get ganked, right? What routes can this jungler do? Well, they can go from river, it can go from try, it can go over blast cone pit, right? So they need to commit 2 wards. Red team needs to commit 2 wards when they're shoving. So if they're shoving over here, what do they need to ward? They need to ward try, and they need to ward dragon pit. That's 2 wards, right? That's very hard as opposed to the 1 ward that could have covered a lot of the time when you're on blue side. So you're going to get a lot of ganks going to your bot lane, red side, and it's going to work a lot of the time. So what do you do as this red side jungler? Well, you're going to start red a lot of the time. And this is the most optimal start because if you're the blue side jungler and you have to route to top to protect this area, then you're not protecting the fact that maybe they want to go for 2 kills. But because you're the red side jungler and you can just route down like this and then into this or into this, into the scuttle again, and you're going to get the scuttle a lot of the time, then you can protect by taking the scuttle, dropping your ward here, and then they can drop 1 ward and try, and then they're fully protected. And then the scuttle covers the blast cone pit again. So this is super, super important. I would say that if your laners are shoving, if all of your laners are shoving, on average, you want to route towards the opposing pit, right? So what's the opposing pit for the blue side? That's going to be the Baron pit, right? That's the pit on the opposite side of the map. What's the pit on your side of the map? Dragon. So if you're the red side jungler, you want to route towards that. And I would say, in general, red side is more beneficial because you'll be protecting 2 players instead of just 1 player in case the enemy team wants to go for a high amount of gold swing. So I know that was a lot to take in. I took 13 minutes to talk about, but I really, really, really think this concept is important because there's too many lower ELO players that don't really understand how to play the game, given that, the laners are shoving. Remember, the laners are shoving means that it's good. You have initiative on the map. You have first invasion pressure. You have first movement on the map from all members of your team. So all you really have to do is make sure they don't get ganked or match the gank, right? We call these match ganks. So I'm going to show you what it typically looks like when you're looking for this match gank situation. So we're going to be playing Rek'Sai, which is, a pretty standard jungler. You can do this with any jungler. Match ganks work with any jungler, obviously. And you're going to be figuring out, I'm just going to show you along the way. And you can even pick up a pink ward if you want. It's like you don't have to, but picking up a pink ward is completely fine in a situation where your laners are shoving because the enemy jungler can't enter the river as freely to clear your wards, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to route bottom to top, but we're going to make sure the entrances are covered so our top lane is protected. Because remember, our bot lane only has to ward here, our mid laner only has to ward here, and then we'll be warding this side, right? So that means that we have a full side protection, and that means everyone's safe for at least a minute. And then you can obviously track the jungler, and then you can match the jungler, and I'll be talking about this as we go on. Similarly, if you're on red side, you want to start this red a lot of the time, like 95% of the time, if you're match ganking, and then you just want to go, and then you want to route into the bottom side jungle, take the scuttle. I also want to mention that besides pushing, you want to always keep in mind which laners have CC, right? Having a bot lane of Varus Soraka that pushes is a lot different than having a bot lane of Jhin Thresh that pushes. The Varus Soraka that pushes is much more susceptible, or there's not as much turn potential, and that comes into play at higher elos as well. So what we're going to be looking to do is we're going to be looking to figure out where the enemy jungler is, right? So what are we doing right now? Theoretically in the game. Well, we're looking for leashes, right? We're checking the red while we're doing our camp. We're checking the blue while we're doing a camp. And we're figuring out, okay, well, it seems like he got a leash from one of these. Or maybe maybe we don't even recognize where the leash is going to be, right? Maybe they started blue for some reason, because they want to proactively gank the top side. That's perfectly fine. So we're going to route level 3. And what we want to do is we want to pick up 3. And just imagine our top laner shoving into them right now. And our mid laner shoving into them right now. Right? So you might think, okay, this is a great time to just do a full clear. But you also want to protect your lanes at the same time. You can see how often I don't play Rek'Sai. Alright, so what do? Now your top laner shoving, your mid laner shoving, so you're going to take Scuttle, right? What does Scuttle prevent? It prevents the Blasting Cone from coming over the wall, or the enemy jungler from coming over the wall. You're going to drop your ward here, and then that's it. You move it back into your jungle. Now you've protected against the jungler coming from onto the mid gank. Your top laner can ward here, and if your top laner is really, really dumb, then you can just ward here for him with this extra ward, right? And then you've protected against the Blast Cone play, which is really the most important thing. So now what do? So if you don't spot the enemy jungler going through the top lane ward in Tribe Rush, going through the Scuttle, or going through this ward, then you move on to this side of the map, right? And what you're going to do is you're just going to do the same thing. You're going to take this, and now you're going to clear this, right? If your bot lane's not smart enough to ward here or ward here, then you're just going to protect them. Drop the ward because this ward is protected, right? Because your laners are shoving, so this ward is okay to keep around. They have defense against this ward because they have shove priority. And then that's just it. If they don't show up here, you know they're on top side again, or they're on the opposite side of the map. You're always going to see the enemy jungler by doing this type of match route. Obviously, it's reciprocal towards the other side of the map. So we cover the entire one side, and then we cover the entire other side. That's just going to be how you match through Scuttles and River, right? It's pretty much that simple. If you don't see them on one side, then you see them on the other side. If you see them on this side, then you don't see them on the other side. And then you just keep on following the other jungler. If you see them, you ping your team to back off, and that's it. Then you either go for the counter jungle, you go for the match if you're on that side, and then you end up letting your laners shove, you do your invades, and it's pretty much GG from there because you have lane shove priority. The game is super, super easy from that point on. So I don't know how valuable this is to some of you. I think that a lot of lower elo players have the problem where they don't know what to do when their laners are shoving, but you really, really, really should be looking to match, to take scuttles, to ward for safety, to do invades, and to do all these things that are more in-depth and team-oriented when you realize that you do have shoving lanes from Champion Select. So I hope this was useful. If it wasn't useful, feel free to tell me in the comments. I know it was like a 20-minute spiel about it, but I felt like this was valuable. And if you liked it, then feel free to follow on Twitter @LolYouMatter, Facebook Chinese Jester, and subscribe here on YouTube. Thank you very much.